Hello, this is Caleb Barney, local realtor in the greater Cleveland, Ohio area, and today I wanted to go over an article from Housing Wire titled Altos Housing Inventory Could Grow 40% this year, but that doesn't mean home prices will fall significantly. So this was written by Mike Simonsen of Altos Research. They're actually partnered with Housing Wire, and he's talking about national inventory, of course. I actually ran data as I was looking at this for the greater Cleveland, Ohio market, which I'll go over at the end of this video too, just to kind of compare what he's seeing and projecting nationally and what our market is doing. Because again, real estate is hyper local, so I'm not faulting Mike for any discrepancies that he's seeing versus what we're seeing, just because he is speaking in generalities of the U.S. housing market, quote unquote, as a whole, as opposed to me just looking at the greater Cleveland, Ohio area. And I'll go over the map of where I'm looking as well. So basically, what he said. He kind of leads off. He said the suspicion was that there were a bunch of sellers that were waiting to sell, and that once rates fell, those sellers would come rushing back into the market, and we'd finally see inventory grow. So this is for the mortgage rate lock-in premise, basically. So he's saying there's these sideline sellers that they don't want to sell their house because why would they trade in their 3% mortgage to get a new home with a 7% mortgage? But what he was saying there, and again, the implicit fear was that maybe we would see too much inventory once interest rates dropped because all of those sellers were listing their house, and that lower mortgage rates would therefore cause home prices to fall. But he was saying that basically, his opinion was the opposite. The only way inventory would grow in 2024 is if mortgage rates climbed. And at the time last fall, so fall of 2023, that was a shocking statement. First, because everyone assumed rates would come down by now, which, to be fair, they sort of have. They did peak the third week in October of 2023, where depending on what your situation was financially, you could see 8% interest rates for a 30-year fixed rate. Right now, we are seeing about 6.9%. So they have fallen, but a lot of people were thinking that we would see rates in the low sixes, basically, which I don't know why they would have thought it would happen that quickly. But second, he said because people think of home sellers as being locked in by high interest rates, because what homeowner is going to give up a 3% mortgage to get a new home with a 7% mortgage? So again, just what we talked about. So the thinking goes, if rising rates prevent sellers and restrict available inventory, then falling rates must do the opposite and lead to more sellers and more inventory of homes on the market. But once again, evidence is opposite of that. Inventory has been rising for 2 years, just as mortgage rates have been rising for 2 years. And again, that's because we're still seeing people sell their houses because of life events, or maybe they've outgrown their home, maybe they got a job change, maybe they lost their job, whatever the case may be. People unfortunately die. Maybe they added to their family and had some kids. So people do still sell their homes, but because interest rates have risen pretty dramatically over 2 years, basically it has kicked some of the buyers to the curb, and they no longer qualify. So there's just fewer buyers that are qualified for a mortgage, and with home prices staying the same or going up in your area more than likely, just as they have here in Northeast Ohio, and with mortgage rates more than doubling, that's where inventory, which is the amount of houses that are still available for sale and not under contract or not sold, has been going up. So it says rates are higher than last year, and inventory is now 20% higher than last year as well. Available inventory of homes on the market is climbing and will continue to climb until we're finally in an environment of declining interest rates. This is what Mike Simonsen is saying. So that's basically what we're looking at here. And basically, when I look at our statistics, I'm not seeing that. So he's saying inventory is now 21% higher than last year. If you look, depending on the month that you're looking at, February of 2024, it did grow. These are the months of inventory. I'll actually show you the amount of houses that were listed here. But basically, yes, inventory grew in February 2024 versus February 2023, but in January is down. And when we're looking at the trend line, it's been back and forth. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. Mostly it's been slightly up in 2023 versus 2022. But again, that makes sense with what he's saying. Interest rates to start 2022 were at 3.1. They ended at 6.7, basically. And then 2023, we were in the sixes and sevens all year, with the exception of the third week in October, where we touched 8%, basically. So months of inventory has grown from 2022 to 2023. But again, that's when we had very, very low rates, and then interest rates were increasing. So this is where he disagrees with the mortgage rate lock-in effect premise. When we actually look at the total number of new listings, this just is showing, and this isn't necessarily anything to do with inventory. I'm just showing here how many listings we have on average per month, broken down basically over the past 5+ years then. So 3,600, almost 3,700 new listings in January this year, which is the lowest out of the past 5 years. And then 4,200 listings almost in February, which is actually higher than what we saw in 2022 and 2023. So that's encouraging to me, because we want to see more listings hit the market, because as you may or may not be aware, if you're looking to buy a home, I'm sure you are aware, there's just not a lot out there right now. So that's what we're looking at as far as the number of new listings. I apologize, I'm working from home today. So that's my dog. As far as active number of listings, though, we see February jumps up. Is that because we had more new listings in February this year versus February last year? Possibly, but basically, the thing that I try to look at is the trend line. Okay, it jumped up February, but it was down in January. And then when we're comparing 2023 numbers to 2022 numbers, you could see again, this is the total number of active listings. So properties that are not currently under contract, it was down in December, down in November, down in October, down in September, down in August, and these are by a fair amount, by the way, down in July, down in June, down just a little bit in May, and then finally there were more active listings in April of 2023 versus April of 2022. But we have seen the number of active listings actually decrease almost for an entire year straight. So I'm not putting too much stock into the active number of listings rising year over year. This is up about 8% and change. But I'm not putting too much stock into that, since this is the first month that it has risen year over year for number of active listings in basically 10 months. So that's where my research is going to disagree with Mike Simonson's, but again, he's going over everything in the U.S. And I'll wait to go over median price here because he hasn't really gone over that yet. So yeah, he's saying that as far as the inventory stats, that we're up 0.5% nationally from last week. And that's the cool part about his data. He gets it weekly minus monthly, and up 21% from a year ago. And again, when we're comparing the Cleveland market, February 2024 versus February 2023, we're up 8% and change. But in January we are down. So not anything statistically significant in my opinion there. And he said there are 100,000 more single family houses on the market than there were in March of last year. Again, we're 12 days in, and depending on when you run the reports, these numbers can be skewed pretty drastically. So I'm not running our numbers through March. I'm running them through our final completed month's data. But yeah, I mean, if you're looking, and I'll get rid of new listings because we don't need to see that. If we're looking at active listings, we are up basically, 511 listings from last year, which is good. That's what we want to see there. So about 500 more homes than there were last year at this time. And he says, unless mortgage rates fall from here, then by July, we could have 40% more homes on the market than a year ago. I'm pretty sure he's just extrapolating, 21% through the first, 10 weeks, 9-10 weeks of the year, and then extrapolating that through July. I don't see that actually happening, though. Even if mortgage rates climb, I mean, they've been kind of on a roller coaster ride where they've been going up and down. It's been a net negative, which is a good thing for us, I believe, to basically start the year here after a couple of rough months there, or a couple of rough weeks with good inflation, good or bad inflation data and jobs data that we were seeing there. So as far as market outliers, he does say that the Gulf markets from Southwest Florida over to Louisiana are basically, they have their inventory levels back to pre-pandemic levels. And that's in stark contrast to the Northeast and parts of the Midwest, where inventory is just starting to grow off pandemic lows. So again, if we're looking at months of inventory, pandemic lows are crazy low. 1.33 months of inventory, which is a ridiculous seller's market. Typically, experts consider it to be a seller's market if you're between 3 to 6 months, basically. Anything below that 3 to 6 months is a balanced market. Anything below 3 would be considered a seller's market. Anything above 6 months of inventory would be considered a buyer's market, where buyers can get a better deal and negotiate more. So we're still firmly planted in a seller's market, and lower than the 2020 and 2019 years. We're actually about halfway to the pre-pandemic levels, which 2019 we had 4.6. We're at 2.32 months of inventory right now. Number of new listings, I actually just exited that out, but we are starting to see more new listings. I don't have information on price cuts. Unfortunately, that's not a statistic that I can run with our MLS, but I am seeing price cuts a little more frequently than, say, definitely a couple years ago, but than last year as well. And then for median home prices, he said that median home prices are up about 1% higher than a year ago. And that's the asking price for all the homes on the market in the U.S. For us, we're seeing a big jump. So basically, 10+% that we're seeing for home prices increasing for the median home price. And you could see that number has been going up by, 11,000 here, 11,000 here, 19,000 here, only 2,000 here, and then back up again, another 19,000 here. So 2022 to 2023, again, 2023 was a rougher year in the real estate market, but you could see, even with that being said, every single month was up year over year in 2023 versus 2022. And so far in 2024, we're jumping up considerably again. So, by the way, while I'm going over, because that's the end of this article here, while I showed you all of the information or all of the data set there, just wanted to kind of go over where I'm picking that from. So it's actually within 25 miles of my location here, which, of course, it reset that. So let me do that again. Yes, we're allowing that. So this is the area that we're looking at. So I'm not cherry picking anything, honestly. Depending on where you're looking, the data can be drastically different. So, if you're looking in Bay Village, Westlake, some more prestigious areas on the west side versus, say you're looking at like North Broadway, Slavic Village over, slightly on the east side here. Those are very different markets from each other. They're also very different from like a Lodi or a Spencer or Wellington, which are much more rural. And then we have parts of Akron, parts of Lorain and Elyria and stuff like that too. So yeah, that's where the data is coming from for all the statistics that I pulled. So again, if you want any specific information about certain cities or anything like that, I can always break that down for us as well. So let me know if you have any questions on the Northeast Ohio housing market in general, and I'd be happy to help.